welcome back. Thank you for being here. To all our followers, we have again Margaret Phanes in our continuation of the interview. Thank you, Margaret, again. So we are going to now to ask more questions about his his deep spiritual connection and also ways of working with the mediums and all these kind of things. So let's see how it's going the interview. Margaret, so what challenged you or what challenge or breakthrough have you encountered in working with such dynamic and radiant medium?
So there's a lot of levels to this
Mhm.
question, but I'll talk a little bit about, because I think it's useful for artists that are working in new medium or new ways
Mhm.
to hear a little bit about the journey that someone goes through. So as we're picking up from last time, the time frame, we're talking late 80s, right? And it was very new to use digital media and be part of any kind of traditional group, local art group or being doing shows or exhibitions within the local structures. And so I found a lot of pushback from a number of areas. Partly it was because the medium is a replicated medium. It can have um, prints, unnumbered prints. There was big concerns that, that was going to affect how traditional media was viewed in the marketplace. So there was that kind of pushback. And in high tech, because it was used for marketing, not necessarily personal creative work, and this is early on, to be doing consciousness themes was just not something considered seriously. So going through that, and again, I think what's important for artists now is that yes, I had to go through that. I had to face that pushback. I had to not be considered seriously or, objected to. But all that process helped me find the place where there was openings, right? And so I did find groups that were open to that cross-fertilization between high tech and consciousness themes. And it took time, it took effort. So I'm just encouraging artists that are facing any kind of pushback, just persevere. Um, so on the other side, the breakthroughs, and I can suggest this also for artists, is that it's a very stressful process. I'm sure you know this. It's a very stressful process to doing something creative. Maybe it doesn't fit quite with what's been done before. And so it's hard not to feel that personally and doubt yourself and kind of go through that, your self-image. So for me, because I was involved in meditation, I was involved with integral yoga at that time, and it was a healing process. It was working with energy, working with um, freeing your consciousness, purification processes, so that I had this way of stepping back, having a witness consciousness, working in consciousness to heal my self-image issues. We all have them, and certainly artists are even more so, right? You take it on the chin when you're trying to put something special out that means something to you. So because I was very dedicated there and I was given a lot of support there, it helped me through that process to find those groups that were supportive, receptive, and then finally working inside the integral yoga community because they had media outlets, they had shows, they had exhibitions, they had conferences in which I could show my work and be given much support and appreciation. So that's the breakthrough.
Thank you, Margaret. Was nice. Good. As how do you approach translating abstract concepts like cosmology, powers, and forces into visual forms?
Yeah, that's again, I take these questions, it's like, okay. You just
Yeah, well, I mean, do you
you
know?
don't just toss them off because first of all, you have to, I want to say something that's meaningful to somebody. First of all, you think of the word abstract concepts, right? Well, ugh. Um, I guess what I would say is that the concepts that you mentioned, there were powers and energies and so forth, how to translate that. Well, yes, they are abstract in a certain way, but they're also experiential in a certain way. They're also perceivable in a certain way. We all perceive very differently, right? We can perceive externally and we can perceive internally. So what I do is whatever I'm considering there that you mentioned, I would invoke a consciousness. I would invoke um, connection to my soul. I would invoke a downpour of light fire. And then I would submit that concept, right? I would consider it, contemplate, and see what comes.
Mhm.
So that's a different way of then just mentally, right? Because that's the thing I think we'll talk a little more about. My work doesn't just come from the mental, right? It comes from the emotional, it can come from energy of life force, lots of different ways of perceiving and different kinds of consciousness can go into that translation. And I want to encourage people um, to not consider things abstractly only, but to take them into their own contemplation process.
Yes, that is good. Thank you. It's true. Um, what role does mythology play in shaping the themes of your digital visual meditation? I mean,
Okay,
if
yes.
you have like an approach to mythology in your life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would say, we've mentioned a little bit about my background. So that always plays into, I think, uh, maybe your view or your approach to
Mhm.
mythology. So because I had a background in art and psychology, and um, when you, especially in humanistic psychology, which is more of my master's degree, um, I would say that Jungian approaches were certainly available and considered, right? Or Joseph Campbell was very common at that time.
Yes, I love it.
And very, very important in sharing that information with the
Mhm.
culture. So, and as I became more aware of um, goddess mythology,
Mhm.
that sort of became more of interest to me as I was starting out. Now, remember, I was using both photo editing and illustration software, but I started as a collage artist as well as a painter. So that would lend itself to more mythic themes, divine feminine, natural symbolic scenes, and so forth. So earlier in my work, it was kind of bringing that forward, exploring it, seeing where that resonated in my culture, where the divine feminine uh, was being honored or at least acknowledged. But I moved away from that to some degree when I started to focus on different planes of consciousness, focusing on the contemplation of the soul force. But it certainly, I think it was an important step for me because I like to play with the abstract and the symbolic, right? So, because well, I can say this again, the mind loves to divide things up into categories. But as an artist and as a creative, we can move and make more transitional and explore those intermediate places. So I can use something that might be mythic, like and abstract, a mandala, for instance,
Mhm.
right? So I think that I view my more formal uh, mythic work as sort of a stepping stone.
Perfect. I like it. You're a stepping stone. So you mentioned that meditation and consciousness studies are central to your portfolio. How do these practices inspire the image that you create?
So I'll preface this a bit with I'm very, I would say, passionate
Mhm.
or enthusiastic about meditation. And I'd like to say why and then see that how it evolved into my creative process. So for many of us, we grow up with um, difficulties in families that are estranged or members that are gone. And then often we face in our young adult life, we might face a physical challenge, which I did. And I was so unprepared for facing a life-threatening illness. And so on the other side of that, I made the commitment to find something that would help me navigate life's challenges. And I believe this, that when you pray for something, when you ask for something sincerely, a door will open. And a door opened for me. So because I started working with light fire practices, I was able to heal some of those images and problems from family. It certainly helped my physical well-being. So you can see that that gives you a viewpoint. It gives you a way of viewing and expressing your creativity. So it's like a foundation. So for me, meditation helped me move past my biases and beliefs that had been causing me difficulty into a place where I could experience, well, this sounds funny, but that I had something to offer, that I haven't had an inner vision. First of all, it allowed me to perceive it, and then gave me, because there's a bit of will involved in following through on that vision. It helped my will. It helped me stand for my truth.
Nice.
So that's where the practices really made a difference in, number one, having the energy to create, right? If you're all, and this is not always true, but for many of us, when we're facing life challenges, when we're facing relationship difficulties, we may have energy for our creative work, but we may not.
Mhm.
So for me, it's not that my life got, smoothed out completely, but it helped me get perspective. It helped me not just react. It helped me have the perspective to respond, right? So that's why I say that the practices help me bring through something that I felt I wanted to express, that I had passion to express, that I wanted to share, that I thought would be helpful. It's helpful to me. It may be helpful to someone else.
Thank you, Margaret. Yes, like this helps me to bring perspective and others is a very nice. It's that you always put the others in your work, and yeah, this is beautiful.
Well,
And
we've
also,
talked about this. We are all connected,
yes,
right? We don't always want to consider that. And sometimes we're burdened by it. But
exactly.
with
So
the right perspective, we can see that we can help one another.
yeah, it's beautiful that vision, because when we understand that when we work in ourselves and we help others with our good vibration, yes, and with heart.
Absolutely. We don't even realize how profound that is, right? We sort of get a mental, that sounds. No, there's a multi-dimensional radiance
Mhm.
that really moves through the environment and can support. And you're giving from an overflow. That's the other thing. People are always, well, how can I help? How can I help? You can help by freeing yourself and radiating a truer, centered beingness and hold that out for others. That's
Exactly.
a big deal. It doesn't mean we don't act in other ways, in external ways, but that foundation, right? Yeah, I'm very focused about that. It's important to me. You
Mhm.
can see.
Yes. Can you share a specific meditation or moment of inspiration that profoundly influenced a piece of your work?
Yes. So this is an interesting story in that it starts in the 90s and it ends up in 2024. So it sort of has a gestation, which is really kind of lovely. So when I started my deeper studies with integral yoga, which is, of course, the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, I joined a meditation group uh, in Santa Cruz. And it was very intensive in that it involved many of the major works of these teachers. And it continued for quite a long period of time, for years. So it was a bit of an immersion, which was helpful because sometimes people say, well, I tried to reach Rear Bendo or I tried to, well, if you're in a group that is reading and you can ask questions and have a round table, it's supportive. So anyway, I was at one of the groups and I heard someone, we were reading the epic work of Sri Aurobindo known as Savitri, and it's called Savitri, a Legend and a Symbol. And this is what the mother says about it. To read Savitri is indeed to practice yoga, spiritual concentration. One can find here all that is needed to realize the divine. So that gives you a kind of an introduction. So we were reading from it, and someone read, and I heard the words, "a deathless sun." And I just was struck. You know, there are times in your life where it's like a bell goes off. And I said, I've waited all my life to hear about a deathless sun. Well, years go by, and of course, I continue to study Sri Aurobindo, the mother, and I continue to create works. And I was asked, it was an anniversary of Sri Aurobindo. It was Sri Aurobindo's 150th birth anniversary in collaboration, the Journal of Integral Yoga. And they asked for experiences on how something of Sri Aurobindo's teachings had impacted you. And so I created this work. And I'd like to describe a little bit why it's emblematic of my work. And one of the things we talked about was the use of transparency. We talked about the use of light and dark. We talked about symbolic or abstract shapes. So this piece has much of that and it may not show on the screen quite clearly, but it has a metallic quality to it. It certainly has iridescence and luminosity. So this is a piece where many, many years passed and many skills were gained where I could bring together that planes of consciousness, layers of complexity, and yet a oneness. There's a oneness and a multiplicity. There's an integration of opposites. And there's a spiral going from the center, the eternal in time, the evolution, the creation.
Yeah, I was. It's interesting how the image have in the top is a little bit darker and now
Yes,
light.
yes, yes. And, you know, it's like you can see the stars better in the darkness.
Yes.
You can see the contrast of the light and the dark.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you.